A family story from the Oregon coast. Grandma, is your tea the minty kind? The kettle is whispering on the stove. I was stirring peppermint tea when my 9-year-old granddaughter, Lily, patted in. Teddy bear tucked under her arm, sand still clinging to her sneakers. She nudged my elbow with a shy grin. Then, without warning, soft as a secret, she added, "Grandma, are we moving?" "Mom said you don't need this house?" I looked up. "She said they'll sell it, and the money is for me," she said. The spoon tapped the cup, a tiny clink. My breath caught. For her? Or for them? I searched her face, only honesty there, the kind that doesn't know it can hurt. What have my daughter Rachel and my son-in-law Kyle been saying behind closed doors? Were the missing letters in those neatly tabbed papers not chores, but warnings? I am Margaret Leland, 67, a widow in our old beach house on the Oregon coast. I thought the hardest thing was learning to live without my husband. From that moment, I began to listen to every whisper, every paper, every wave, and to make a plan. Subscribe if you like this kind of story. "Where did you hear that, sweetheart?" I asked, keeping my tone soft. 30 years in the classroom had taught me how to draw words out of children without frightening them. She hugged her teddy tighter. "Last night, Mommy told Daddy that selling the beach house would bring a lot of money. Daddy said, 'You don't need that much anyway, just a place with doctors.' Then Mommy said, 'Once you signed the paper giving the property to me, they could move you to where old people live.' She said it was for my future." From the living room, the crash of waves against the shore echoed like a slow, steady drum. On the counter sat a stack of freshly printed papers Rachel had left that morning. Property transfer authorization. She'd smiled sweetly. "It's just precaution, Mom." A few signatures. Kyle stood behind her, his eyes gleaming at the mention of the market booming. I poured tea into Lily's cup. "Here, darling." "Oatmeal cookies, too. I'm not hungry." Her voice sank. "Grandma, are you going away?" I bent down, leveling my gaze with hers. "Wherever I am, that's home." "And you, Lily, you just did something very brave." Her little hand slipped into mine, cold and trembling. I squeezed it gently. "At my age, you learn to hear the cracks before you see them. Cracks in a voice, in a smile, in a family." Lily's words only confirmed what my bones had been whispering for weeks. The smell of freshly inked contracts, the sweat of a man drowning in debt, the sweetness of a daughter's voice that carried the tang of calculation. I moved calmly, setting the kettle aside. From beneath the sink, I drew out a tin box decorated with faded anemones. Inside were duplicates of my deed, tax records, and an old address book. I placed it on the high shelf, within my reach, beyond theirs. The doorbell chimed. Rachel stepped into the kitchen, hair pinned tight, perfume sharp. "Mom, let's stop by the notary at noon." Kyle set it up. "It'll take 15 minutes tops. Just sign, and you won't have to worry anymore." "Wonderful," I smiled, my voice even. "Let me brew some coffee to bring along." Her eyes flicked toward the papers, then to Lily, before she kissed her daughter's cheek. "Sweetheart, go play in the living room." When she turned away, I caught Kyle's nod from the porch, the nod of a man convinced the trap had already sprung. I turned to Lily. "Come, sit on the porch with me. Let's listen to the waves." We sat on the weathered steps. The sea stretched out dark and blue, gulls circling low. Lily rested her head on my shoulder. I told her about how her grandfather had built the fence with his clumsy but patient hands. A house isn't just wood and nails. It's the promises we keep inside it. Then why does Mommy want to sell it? Lily's question held no accusation, only sorrow. "Because grown-ups get scared," I answered slowly. "Scared of not having enough. Scared of failing, and when people are afraid, they forget what enough really is. But I haven't forgotten you." Her hair whipped across my cheek in the wind. I slipped a folded note into the tin box. James Carter, 2 p.m., Harbor Cafe. If Rachel rifled through drawers again, she'd find only dish towels. Not this map I was quietly drawing for myself. I rose, dusting off my apron. "I've got errands before the notary," I said, just loud enough for eavesdropping ears. But Lily caught the steadiness in my tone, the rhythm of my heart settling. "If Mommy asks, tell her I went to buy twine for the tomato vines," I whispered. And it was true. The vines needed tying. The smallest truths can shield the biggest secrets. Back in the kitchen, the kettle whistled again. I poured the hot water into my thermos, slipped it into my bag alongside my wallet, notebook, and an old fountain pen, my retirement gift from Frank. My reflection in the fridge door showed silver hair pinned neatly, eyes dry, hands steady. I kissed Lily's forehead. I'll be back soon. You stay with Mommy, okay? You will come back? Her voice trembled. Of course, I smiled. The tomatoes still need me. The screen door clicked shut. Salt and cedar filled the air as I stepped onto the gravel path. Each step felt like a stitch in new fabric, steady, deliberate. They say older women fear change. They're wrong. I had already survived losing my husband. Now I was learning something new, how to say no without raising my voice. I walked toward Harbor Cafe. Above me, the gulls wheeled suddenly, sharply, as if they too had changed their minds mid-flight. Grandma, my parents are going to sell your house and take the money, Lily had whispered. Then I made my plan. 3 years ago, this house was alive. Frank's laughter echoed in the hall, his boots always leaving sand at the door, no matter how many times I scolded him. You married a fisherman's son, Maggie, he'd chuckle, brushing off the mess. And I'd roll my eyes, but smile anyway, because I knew it meant he was still strong enough to walk the beach with me. Then one winter morning, his heart gave out. Just like that, the sound of boots and laughter vanished. The house grew too quiet, like even the waves outside had lowered their voices in respect. For a while, I thought I could manage. I was 65 then, still driving my old Honda, still paying bills on time, still cooking enough pot roast for 2 and giving half away to Marlene, my neighbor of 20 years. We'd sit on the porch with tea, talk about our gardens or about nothing at all. Silence with her never felt empty, but grief has a way of hollowing you out. When Rachel called, her voice dripping with concern. Mom, you shouldn't be alone. Let us help. We'll move closer, Kyle can find work there, and Lily will keep you company. I wanted to believe it was love. They arrived within months, boxes stacked high, smiles bright. Kyle shook my hand firmly, said, No, don't worry. It's temporary. Just until I get back on my feet, Rachel hugged me and whispered, Everything's going to be better now, Mom. You won't have to carry it all. At first, it felt like salvation. I sold my Honda. You don't need 2 cars, Mom. We'll drive you wherever you need to go. I handed over part of Frank's savings when bills piled up. It's just until Kyle gets work again. I thought I was doing what any mother would, easing my children's burdens. But little by little, my world shrank. Rachel started answering the phone for me. Mom's resting. She doesn't want visitors right now. Soon, Marlene stopped dropping by with her lemon pound cake. I asked Rachel about her once and she just shrugged. She's busy. You don't need all that company, Mom. You've got us. Kyle took over the mail. Too complicated for you, Mom. I'll sort it, bills. I used to manage disappeared into his desk drawer, and the house, once filled with Frank's memory and my choices, began to feel like theirs. I remember one evening standing in the kitchen, my hands in soapy water, staring at the window. I used to decide what flowers went in the garden, what paint went on the porch, and when Marlene and I would go to bingo night. Now, every decision seemed to pass through Rachel's smile or Kyle's shrug. And I let it happen. Because I told myself, this is what family is. This is what Frank would have wanted, for me to lean on them. But deep down, another voice whispered, This isn't leaning. This is losing yourself. I ignored it. I folded that voice away with the same care I folded Frank's shirts, sealed in boxes I still couldn't bear to open. Back then, I thought, survival meant silence. That if I just didn't rock the boat, if I gave enough, money, space, control, Rachel and Kyle would keep me safe. But looking back now, I see it clearly. Survival isn't silence. It's the courage to keep your voice. And today, after Lily's whisper, I know, mine is coming back. Lunch smelled like sweet corn soup. Rachel set a neat stack of papers beside the blue enamel plate and sat across from me, posture perfect, cardigan buttoned to the throat. The caring daughter costume always fit her well. Mom, can you look these over? She smiled, voice powdered with concern. They're just to secure things for Lily later. I dried my hands on a towel and glanced at the bold headers. Durable power of attorney, gift deed, quit claim, emergency asset authorization, lines crisp, margins spotless, the way Rachel arranges a china cabinet, everything stacked so tightly there's no air left between the plates. Where'd you print these? I asked. The copy shop in town. She flipped a page to show me the tabs she'd flagged. Kyle says the sooner we do this, the less you'll have on your mind. A few signatures, that's it. A few signatures, I repeated inside my head, tasting the weight of it. The day Frank died, I signed 4 forms. Today there were 11. Numbers don't lie. They simply wait to be read. Kyle came in, phone dangling from his fingers, jaw stubbled the way it gets when his luck runs lean. Hot update, he said. Oceanfront 2 blocks over, 1.25 million. Easy. Market's not waiting on anyone. He leaned toward the window, taking in the strip of sand we've walked for 30 years. Mom, with your 180 feet of frontage, we're sitting on gold. This is my home, I said evenly. And Frank's. We know, Rachel said quickly, smoothing the air between us. We're just protecting it. If it's in Lily's name, it's safer. You still live here, of course. Protecting who? Protecting what? Frank never learned the language of paperwork. He read tides and clouds, not indemnities and indemnifiers. He closed this door each night with a tired thumb and said, "Safe now." Kyle tapped a page. Right here. Quitclaim. You sign, we're efficient. Notary's $75. Don't let the window close. Old folks don't need much. The sentence landed with a dull knock against my ribs. Once you said I was your whole sky. Now the sky should be smaller? Lily hovered in the doorway with her frayed teddy, eyes skimming the papers before finding mine. I gave a tiny nod. It's okay, I see you. And she vanished like a cautious bird. Rachel slid the pen closer. Sign here, here, and here. I marked everything. I'll read them first, I said. You don't have to, Kyle said, smile thinning. It's all standard. Trust us, I have. Long enough. That afternoon, Kyle went loud on speakerphone. Yeah, oceanfront, the full 180 feet, he told someone. No listing yet, paperwork's in motion. If your buyer's clean, we can close in 45 days. Rachel waved sharply. Lower your voice. I stood in the kitchen doorway with a dish towel, the old teacher in me cataloging tone, volume, and choice of words. What are you two discussing? Just getting comps, Kyle said, clearing his throat. For fun, Rachel added with a brittle laugh. Don't worry, Mom. Do I still have the right to worry? Or does worry require their permission now? After dinner, the house went to its evening hush. Somewhere beyond the windows, the Pacific ran its quiet metronome. I heard whispering in the garage. The door had been left slightly ajar. Rachel's voice, sweetened, sped up. Kyle's, low, urgent. Once she signs, Kyle said, we move her to the place with on-site nurses. Done. Keep it down, Rachel hissed. We'll say it's for her health and for Lily's future. No one can fault that I was barefoot on the tile, the cold seeping into my bones. A soft scuff at the base of the stairs, Lily. She'd heard too. Her gaze lifted to mine, round and wounded. I pressed a finger to my lips. She nodded and melted into shadow. Done. A word like a latch dropping on the inside of a door I once believed I controlled. Morning arrived with a tray and a tone. Did you sleep? Rachel asked brightly. Some. I booked the notary for 11:30. She eyed my closet. Wear the blue sweater. It photographs well as if we were staging me, not the house. Kyle straightened a seascape print as if aligning frames could align ethics. Once this is handled, you won't have to lift a finger. We handle everything. We handle everything. I echoed him softly, and a parade walked through my mind. 37 weeknight drives to town, while Rachel chased watercolor classes and I waited in the car till after 9 p.m. The 24 tubes of paint I bought when she wanted to try again, the $10,000 check I pressed into her palm on her wedding day, tutoring money saved one sixth-grade essay at a time. I had handled everything, because that is what mothers do. Now my daughter wanted to handle me, and the key she asked for fit the front door. Rachel set her hand on my shoulder, the gentleness practiced to the millimeter. From now on, you won't have to sign anything. We'll sign for you, just trust us. Outside, the wind knocked once against the window. In my head, too, a door went thunk. One closing, another easing open. Give me the file, I said. If I'm to be comfortable, I need to understand. Kyle sighed, the sound of a salesman losing patience. Mom, you're not as sharp as you used to be. The judgment landed like cool ash on my shoulders. Maybe I'm not slower. Maybe I'm finally slowing down enough to hear clearly. Rachel stroked the air again. Kyle didn't mean that. You're just tired. This is for Lily, for Lily. I looked at her tiny backpack slumped in the corner, the zipper frayed. A 9-year-old needs at least one adult who can say enough and mean it. That afternoon, Kyle went loud on speakerphone. Yeah, oceanfront, the full 180 feet, he told someone. No listing yet. Paperwork's in motion. If your buyer's clean, we can close in 45 days. Rachel waved sharply. Lower your voice. I stood in the kitchen doorway with a dish towel, the old teacher and me cataloging tone, volume, and choice of words. What are you two discussing? Just getting comps, Kyle said, clearing his throat. For fun, Rachel added with a brittle laugh. Don't worry, Mom. Do I still have the right to worry? Or does worry require their permission now? After dinner, the house went to its evening hush. Somewhere beyond the windows, the Pacific ran its quiet metronome. I heard whispering in the garage. The door had been left slightly ajar. Rachel's voice, sweetened, sped up. Kyle's, low, urgent. Once she signs, Kyle said, we move her to the place with on-site nurses. Done. Keep it down, Rachel hissed. We'll say it's for her health and for Lily's future. No one can fault that I was barefoot on the tile, the cold seeping into my bones. A soft scuff at the base of the stairs, Lily. She'd heard too. Her gaze lifted to mine, round and wounded. I pressed a finger to my lips. She nodded and melted into shadow. Done. A word like a latch dropping on the inside of a door I once believed I controlled. Morning arrived with a tray and a tone. Did you sleep? Rachel asked brightly. Some. I booked the notary for 11:30. She eyed my closet. Wear the blue sweater. It photographs well as if we were staging me, not the house. Kyle straightened a seascape print as if aligning frames could align ethics. Once this is handled, you won't have to lift a finger. We handle everything. We handle everything. I echoed him softly, and a parade walked through my mind. 37 weeknight drives to town, while Rachel chased watercolor classes and I waited in the car till after 9 p.m. The 24 tubes of paint I bought when she wanted to try again. The $10,000 check I pressed into her palm on her wedding day, tutoring money saved one 6th grade essay at a time. I had handled everything because that is what mothers do. Now my daughter wanted to handle me, and the key she asked for fit the front door. Rachel set her hand on my shoulder, the gentleness practiced to the millimeter. From now on, you won't have to sign anything. We'll sign for you, just trust us. Outside, the wind knocked once against the window. In my head, too, a door went thunk, one closing, another easing open. Give me the file, I said. If I'm to be comfortable, I need to understand. Kyle sighed, the sound of a salesman losing patience. Mom, you're not as sharp as you used to be. The judgment landed like cool ash on my shoulders. Maybe I'm not slower, maybe I'm finally slowing down, enough to hear clearly. Rachel stroked the air again. Kyle didn't mean that. You're just tired. This is for Lily, for Lily. I looked at her tiny backpack slumped in the corner, the zipper frayed. A 9-year-old needs at least one adult who can say enough and mean it. By late afternoon, I was in the backyard tying the tomato vines. My knots were snug but kind, tight enough to hold, loose enough to let the stems grow. Frank always cinched an extra loop to be safe. I smiled to myself. Safety isn't in the number of loops. It's in the hands doing the tying. From here, the house was an X-ray. White paint is flaking at the threshold. A tea stain on the sill from the day Marlene and I laughed hard enough to spill. Inside, Rachel shuffled forms to the order she preferred. Kyle's calculator clicked like a cricket that didn't know when to stop. Everything looked clean, reasonable, like a helping mom script with no villain and no blood. Only paperwork, only power. And still, every line and every look had altered the gravity of this place, shifting it from my home to their project. Dusk came down in thin purple sheets. I sat on the worn step and let my hands rest. The questions arrived in a tide. When did Rachel stop leaning her head on my shoulder when life scared her? When did Mom, what do you think? Become Mom, sign here? When did her smile start smelling like plans instead of home? I saw it all, plain as lighthouse light. The traps here didn't have teeth. They had letterhead. They didn't bite. They bound. And they wore pretty names. Protection, assurance, peace of mind. I placed a palm over my chest and waited for the rhythm to steady. Inside that measured beat, a choice took shape, precise as the knots along the trellis. I would not sign my own disappearance. They could drive me to the notary at 11:30. I would go, not to hand over keys, but to reclaim my voice. And when I used it, I would keep it low and certain. Like a good knot, it doesn't bruise the vine, it simply holds. Harbor Cafe sat 2 towns over where no one knew my name and the gulls sounded like any other gulls. James Carter was already there, back to the wall, a legal pad open, reading glasses low on his nose. Same James from sophomore English, the one who argued with professors and still walked them to the parking lot with his book bag. He stood when he saw me. Maggie. His voice carried the gentleness people reserve for hospital rooms and funerals. I hugged him anyway. I need my house to stop being prey, I said, sliding into the booth, and I need Lily safe from the kind of love that spends other people's money. James nodded once. Then we do this clean. Lawful, documented, and we do it now. We ordered coffee. He turned the legal pad toward me and wrote in block letters. Purpose, protect home, plus protect Lily, plus preserve your voice. First, revoke anything that lets Rachel or Kyle act for you, he said. Do you have a power of attorney naming either of them? They printed one for me, I said. 11 forms. I signed none good. He drew a line through POA and wrote revoke/replace. We'll draft a revocation of prior powers of attorney, and you'll sign new, narrow ones. Limited healthcare proxy to someone you trust, doesn't have to be me, and a limited financial POA that activates only if 2 physicians say you can't manage. We'll attach HIPAA releases so no one can claim secrecy. He looked up. Maggie, I'm still licensed, but I'm retired. I won't be your trustee. You need an independent one with a fiduciary duty that survives family storms. Who? Harbor Community Bank, Trust Department. They're dull, which is what you want. He smiled. Now, the spine of this thing, a trust. He printed a title across the page, Lily Harbor Trust, irrevocable. James pushed his glasses up and leaned closer. All right, Maggie, here's how we build this fence, he said. Not a wall, a fence, with gates that open the way you want, not the way they want. He started jotting things down, but explained it like a teacher breaking down fractions. First, the trust will carry your name as the one who set it up. But the whole point is Lily. She's the one it's for, and she's the only one who'll ever benefit. I nodded. So, Rachel and Kyle? Barred, he said flatly. They'll never touch the steering wheel. Not as trustees, not as advisors. The trustee will be a bank, not family, because banks don't get tempted by SUVs or credit card debt. He tapped the pad. Now, about Lily's share. She won't be able to spend it like candy money. It'll only be for the big things. Health, education, basic support. And until she's 25, the bulk stays locked up. She can get help for braces, books, or college tuition, but she won't see a lump sum until she's old enough to understand what it means. I breathed out slowly. Good. She deserves a future, not a piggy bank her parents raid. Exactly. And your house? This place you and Frank built your life in? That stays yours. You'll have the legal right to live there for the rest of your life. No one can move you out, not even the trustee. The trust will even cover property taxes and insurance so Kyle can't wave bills in your face. And if someday I choose to leave, then the trustee sells it, but the money doesn't go to Rachel or Kyle. It stays inside the trust, reinvested for Lily. Not one penny leaks. James leaned back. And just to seal it shut, we put in what's called a no contest clause. If anybody challenges this setup, if Rachel or Kyle decide to drag it into court, they get $1. That's it. The judge will honor the trust, not their tantrum. I sat back, my tea cooling between my hands. For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel again. Steady, like the ground under my feet was mine. James tapped the last line. Families don't like no contest clauses. That's the point. He flipped the page. Next, we move the asset. Deed, I said, surprising both of us with how steady I sounded. Exactly. We'll record a statutory warranty deed, Oregon, transferring title from you to Harbor Community Bank, trustee of the Lily Harbor Trust, dated date. We'll also record a memorandum notice of trust. That tells the world who holds title without revealing your private terms. Will I still own it? The question snagged in my throat. You'll control your right to live there, he said. Ownership shifts to the trust, not to Rachel, not to Kyle, not to anyone who can talk fast. That's the trade. Privacy and protection over raw title. You'll also sign a right of occupancy agreement. Formalizes what's already true. It's your home until you say otherwise. He moved to banking, ticking items like a metronome. New trust checking and reserve account for taxes/insurance. Close any joint access. Move your personal accounts to a new bank. Credit freeze with the Bureau's P.O. box for all financial mail. Change the lockbox code and the alarm PIN. Limit mail access. He paused. And a pour-over will. Anything you forget to retitle, old CD, refund checks, gets poured into the trust at death. Clean edges, I stared at the pad, the tidy architecture of a life rebuilt. My fingers found the old fountain pen in my purse. Frank's pen. The weight of it always surprised me. This isn't about punishing Rachel, I said. The word surprised me more than the pen. I keep replaying her at 12. How she cried when her guinea pig died. How she held funerals under the maple and spoke like a pastor. Somewhere between then and now, she started speaking like a realtor. I don't know where I lost her. You don't have to answer that today, James said. Today you answer this. Where do you want your boundaries to begin? In my doorway, I said, and in my checkbook. He smiled, but not with his eyes. Then 2 more things. We draft a letter of wishes, not legally binding, but strong guidance to the trustee. You'll write that distributions for Lily should include books, summer camps, braces, college funds, but not to replace her parents' obligations. And we draft a family letter to Rachel. Not angry, just clear. It explains the trust, your right to live in the house, and the rules. No keys, no codes, no signatures for Mom. I can't imagine her reading it without rolling her eyes, I said. Then we're writing it for the judge in her head, he said softly. People listen differently when the paper has a letterhead. Our coffees had gone cold. He pushed a new cup toward me and lowered his voice. Timing. They've set a notary for 11:30. We beat them to the punch. You'll meet me at the county clerk's office at 10 o'clock. We'll file the deed and notice. By lunchtime, even if they wheel you into a notary, you won't own what they're after. The house will own itself, I murmured. The trust will, he corrected, smiling. But yes. And Lily, I asked. She gets a future, not a payday. The trust grows for her education and needs, not her parents' debts. When she turns 25, she can start receiving principal in scheduled steps, not all at once. Guardrails, not cages. I traced the word spendthrift with my fingertip. Spendthrift. Such an ugly word for such a kind fence. It's a fence with a gate, he said. You hold the key while you're here. The trustee holds it after. That's how we keep Kyle from hopping it. We sat with the plan between us. Through the window, the ocean was a long gray ribbon. I thought of Rachel's cardigan buttoned to the throat, Kyle's phone buzzing like a trapped fly, Lily's backpack with the frayed zipper. Family is the first house we live in. Some rooms you keep, some doors you lock. James capped his pen. Maggie, I'll say this as your friend, not your lawyer. Leave a light on for your daughter. But wire the door, I nodded. I'll set the porch light to a timer. We signed the retainer. He slid copies toward me, then paused. One last recommendation, he said. A doctor's letter. Your primary care physician documents that you are of sound mind, managing medications and finances. No cognitive red flags. Not because you need to prove yourself, but because paper beats rumor. Paper beats rumor, I echoed. And rumor loves a kitchen table. When we stood to leave, he squeezed my hand. You don't owe anyone your roof to prove you love them. I know, I said. I just needed to hear it out loud. On the drive back, I rehearsed the family letter in my head. Rachel, I love you. This is how I love you now, with boundaries you can lean on without knocking me over. The sky over the coast was the color of old pewter. Somewhere behind it, the sun was still doing its job, whether we acknowledged it or not. At a red light, I touched Frank's pen again and smiled. People say I used to be a weak woman pretending to be strong. They were wrong. I was a strong woman pretending to be weak, because I thought that was what kept a family together. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., I will stop pretending. It started with little things. At breakfast, I put the sugar in the cupboard instead of the counter. When Rachel asked why, I blinked and said, "Oh, did I?" At dinner, I'd forget the story I'd told yesterday and ask again, as if it had slipped through the cracks. Rachel would glance at Kyle over her fork, that silent exchange parents share when a child is struggling, only this time I was the child in their eyes. Perfect. Every evening when the house grew quiet, I slipped my phone into record mode and left it on the hall table. Voices carried in this old house, Rachel's clipped tones, Kyle's gruff mutters. Later, I'd play them back, tucking the files into a hidden folder. Paper trails are one thing, but voices can't deny themselves. One afternoon, the mail carrier left an envelope addressed to me. Before I could reach for it, Kyle scooped it up. "I'll sort it, Mom." "Don't strain your eyes." That night, I found the same envelope in the trash. It was from my bank. I pulled it out, smoothed the wrinkles, and slid it into the tin box with the rest of my evidence. Day by day, I built a shadow library of their intentions. Bank mail with corners torn, draft contracts left in the printer tray, receipts with my name crossed out, theirs penciled in. Small things, but small things add up. The first turning point came on a Tuesday. Rachel drove me to a checkup. The waiting room smelled of disinfectant and old magazines. Kyle had arranged the appointment with a doctor he knew from Rotary. Rachel squeezed my hand. "Just routine, Mom." "To make sure you're managing?" The doctor entered briskly, stethoscope bouncing, clipboard ready. His questions seemed rehearsed. "Mrs. Leland, do you ever forget where you put your keys?" "Yes," I said and widened my eyes. "All the time." "Do you struggle with bills, with remembering dates?" "Oh, yes, I can barely keep track," I murmured. Then, after a pause, I added softly, "Thank goodness Rachel helps." Rachel's smile tightened, triumphant. Inside, I was steady as bedrock. "Keep underestimating me," I thought. "The deeper you dig this hole, the more dangerous it will be when you fall in." After the exam, the doctor stepped out with Rachel and Kyle. Their voices filtered through the thin wall. "She'll need some kind of guardianship soon," he said. "Best to start the paperwork." Rachel whispered something I couldn't hear, but I caught Kyle's reply. "Perfect. That'll make the transfer clean." I buttoned my coat with careful fingers, then slipped the phone from my pocket. The red light was still glowing. Every word captured. As we walked back to the car, Rachel guided me by the elbow like I was made of glass. "Don't worry, Mom. We'll take care of you." I tilted my head, feigning confusion. "Take care of me how?" "You'll see," she said softly, almost lovingly. And in that moment, I thought of Lily's small voice whispering, "They're going to take all your money." I smiled faintly, letting Rachel buckle my seatbelt. Because what she didn't know was this. She was already sitting in the trap I'd built myself. The notary's office was small, almost too bright. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, bouncing off a metal desk polished within an inch of its life. Rachel had dressed for victory, navy blazer, pearls at her ears. Kyle wore a tie, the first I'd seen on him since Lily's christening. "Here you go, Mom." Rachel slid the stack of papers across the desk, each page neatly tabbed with a yellow sticker. "Just sign where it says your name." 3 spots, easy as pie. She pushed the pen into my hand like a nurse offering medicine to a stubborn patient. Her smile was wide, rehearsed. Kyle leaned back in his chair, fingers laced across his stomach, the look of a man already spending what wasn't his. For a moment, I let the pen hover over the first page. The room went silent except for the hum of those lights. Rachel's breath caught, and Kyle's knee bounced once under the desk. Then I set the pen down. Slowly, deliberately, I reached into my purse. "Actually," I said, voice steady, "I brought my own paperwork." From the leather folder, I pulled out a crisp stack with blue tabs of its own. James stepped forward from the back of the room. He hadn't said a word since we walked in, just sat quietly, briefcase at his feet, watching. Now he took his place beside me. Rachel's smile faltered. "What's this?" James adjusted his glasses. "A clarification of Mrs. Leland's current legal arrangements, filed and recorded at the county clerk's office this morning at 10:07 a.m. He set the documents neatly on the desk. "All prior powers of attorney have been revoked. Effective immediately, Rachel and Kyle Leland have no authority over Mrs. Leland's affairs." The notary blinked, eyes darting between the stacks. Kyle sat up straight. What? That's not... She doesn't understand what she signed. James didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. She understood perfectly. In fact, she created an irrevocable trust, the Lily Harbor Trust, naming her granddaughter as the sole beneficiary. Title to the beach house tax accounts and reserve funds, totaling $842,315, are now under trustee management, independent oversight, bank administered. Untouchable. Rachel's pearl earrings trembled as she shook her head. That's not possible. We made an appointment? You did, James said, pulling out another folder. And in the meantime, Mrs. Leland made hers. These, he tapped the pages, are court-admissible documents. Certified copies. If you'd like, I can also play recordings from your doctor's office last Tuesday, where you discussed guardianship and clean transfers. The blood drained from Rachel's face. Kyle slammed his hand on the table. You tricked us. I looked at him calmly. No, Kyle. I learned from you. You set the trap. I just chose which one of us would fall in. The notary shifted in his chair, clearly wishing himself anywhere else. James slid the evidence across, printed transcripts of the recorded conversations, mail with torn edges, receipts showing my name replaced with theirs. Documented attempts at financial exploitation of a senior citizen, he said. Under Oregon statute, it carries civil penalties, and criminal if pressed. The room shrank to silence. Rachel gripped the arms of her chair, knuckles white. Kyle's tie seemed to choke him, his face blotched red. I folded my hands in my lap. For the first time in months, I felt taller than both of them. Taller than their plans, their whispers, their neat little yellow tabs. Rachel whispered, Mom, how could you? I met her eyes, not cruel, but certain. The better question, Rachel, is, how could you? And in the humming light of that office, I knew the game had changed. The courthouse hallway glowed a sickly yellow. The clock ticked past 2:14 p.m. Kyle yanked at his tie, jaw tight. We'll file our own petition, he snapped. She's not competent. Those papers mean nothing. James closed his briefcase with a soft click. File if you like, he said evenly, but Mrs. Leland has everything. A revocation of prior powers, the deed recorded at 10:07 a.m., and recordings from Tuesday's doctor's visit where you and your friend discussed guardianship and a clean transfer? That's evidence of elder financial exploitation under Oregon law. Rachel clutched her handbag like a shield. James, you're exaggerating. My mother forgets things. We were just protecting her. I held her gaze. Protecting me by taking my keys? The courtroom doors swung open. Case called, the clerk said. Inside, the judge adjusted his glasses. Matter of Leland, motion for protective injunction and asset restriction. His gavel tapped once, sharp. James rose. Your Honor, we request a 5-year injunction. Rachel and Kyle Leland are to be barred from any legal access to Mrs. Margaret Leland's assets. No banking authority, no power of attorney, no interference with Harbor Community Bank Trust Department. Exhibits A through D submitted. Kyle shot up. Objection. This is family. We have rights. You'll have your turn, the judge said curtly. James slid folders forward. Exhibit A. Revocation of all prior powers of attorney. New, limited POAS. Activated only if 2 independent physicians certify incapacity. Exhibit B. Warranty deed transferring title of the beachfront property, 180 feet frontage, and assets totaling $842,315 to the Lily Harbor Trust with Harbor Bank as trustee. Notice of trust recorded. Exhibit C. Audio recording from Tuesday, 3:17 p.m. The physician recommended guardianship for a clean transfer, with Kyle's agreement. Exhibit D. Letter from Mrs. Leland's primary physician, dated yesterday, affirming full mental capacity and ability to manage finances and medications. The judge nodded. Defense? Rachel rose, her voice sweet, careful. Your Honor, my mother has been confused. She's misplaced bills, lost mail. We just wanted stability for her. This so-called trust, James Carter is driving a wedge between family. James's reply was calm. Your Honor, we call Marlene Fisher. Marlene, gray cardigan, steady hands, walked to the stand. She touched my shoulder briefly as she passed. Neighbor for how long? James asked. 20 years, Marlene said. We had tea every week. This last year, I was turned away at least 6 times. Rachel said, "When Mom's too tired, don't come." I rang the bell, no answer. I saw Kyle take the mail before Margaret could touch it. He said, "I'll handle it." Did you ever see Margaret confused to the point of danger? No. She remembers Frank's death anniversary, her doctor's name, even the lock combination on the shed better than I do. Marlene's smile was faint but fierce. The only forgetting I've seen is others forgetting she still has a voice. Rachel shot up. Are you accusing me of isolating my mother? Marlene met her eyes. Not accusing. Stating order, the judge warned. Kyle barked, and that recording? You twisted it. We were just seeking medical advice. James pressed a button. The doctor's voice filled the courtroom. Guardianship soon, clean transfer. Then Kyle's, perfect. That'll make the transfer clean. The silence after was heavy. The judge turned to me. Mrs. Leland, would you like to speak? I rose. I raised my daughter. I drove her to 37 night classes, bought her 24 tubes of paint, gave her $10,000 on her wedding day. I trusted her. But trust doesn't mean signing myself away. Today, all I ask is to keep the keys to my own life. Kyle slammed his palm on the table. We'll petition for guardianship. She's not competent. James's voice cut clean. And yet the trust is recorded. The physician's letter confirms capacity, and every attempt they've made is documented. Petition all you like. The assets are beyond their reach. Enough, the judge said, gavel striking. This court grants the petition. Rachel and Kyle Leland are hereby enjoined for 5 years from exercising or claiming any authority over Margaret Leland's finances, contacting or pressuring Harbor Community Bank, Trust Department, interfering with, transferring, or encumbering any asset within the Lily Harbor Trust. Violations will result in contempt of court, fines up to $5,000 per occurrence and/or imprisonment. The gavel came down again. And let me add, family means respecting boundaries, not signing on each other's behalf. Rachel collapsed into her chair, tears streaking her cheeks. Kyle tugged at his tie as though it were a noose. From the back row, Marlene slipped her hand into mine, warm as an old teacup. James leaned close and whispered, "That's round 1." I nodded. Outside, the sea kept its rhythm. In here, the storm had passed, and for the first time, the silence belonged to me. The trial was over, the papers filed, the gavel struck, but the weight of it lingered in my chest. It was nearly dusk when I found Lily waiting at the dunes, her knees pulled to her chest, the tide whispering in and out. She looked at me with eyes too old for 8 years. "Grandma," she asked softly, "are you mad at my mom?" Her words cut deeper than any courtroom. I sat beside her on the sand, smoothing my skirt, letting the cold grains sift through my fingers. The ocean stretched wide, steady, as if to remind me there's more to the story than this one day. I thought about Rachel, the little girl who once buried her guinea pig in our yard and gave a eulogy like a preacher, her eyes swollen from crying. Somewhere along the way, that tenderness hardened into calculation. Bills piled, debts mounted, Kyle whispering about quick money, easy markets. Rachel, always so afraid of scarcity, had learned to grab before someone else could. "No, sweetheart," I said at last. "I'm not mad." People make mistakes, sometimes very big ones. When grown-ups are scared, when they feel the world slipping away, they do things they shouldn't. Your mom, she let fear and money talk louder than love. Lily's brow furrowed. But she loves me. She does, I nodded. And that's why I had to do what I did. Because love isn't letting someone use you. Love isn't saying yes when every part of you knows you should say no. Sometimes the bravest way to love your family is to stop them before they hurt you, or themselves. The waves slapped against the shore. I could hear Rachel's voice in my memory. "It's just signatures, Mom." Easy as pie, and Kyle's. "Old folks don't need much." I turned back to Lily. "I didn't stand up today just for me. I did it for you. So when you grow up, you'll remember this. Women, even when people call us weak, even when they treat us like we don't matter, we can still say no, and we can make it stick." Her small hand slipped into mine, fingers cold but sure. "So you weren't fighting Mom? You were teaching? I smiled, my throat tight. Exactly. Teaching her, and maybe teaching you too. We sat in silence for a while, watching the gulls wheel against the fading light. Lily leaned her head against my shoulder, her breath slowing. For the first time in months, I felt peace ripple through me like the tide. Because this wasn't just about saving my house or my money. It was about planting something deeper in the heart of the only person in this family who still listened. It didn't take long. In a town like ours, news travels faster than the tide. What had been whispered in a courtroom became coffee shop chatter by morning, and by Sunday sermon, it was fact. Rachel had always been the polished one. The cardigan, the pearls, the tidy phrases. She managed a small insurance office, the kind of place where neighbors signed policies because they trusted her smile. But trust is fragile. When word spread that she tried to take her own mother's house, clients called in to cancel. By the end of the quarter, the company let her go. They used words like restructuring, but everyone knew. Kyle fared no better. He'd been playing advisor for years without a license, whispering about market opportunities, coaching friends to move money while pocketing referral fees. After James turned over the recordings, regulators started sniffing around. Letters arrived, first polite inquiries, then subpoenas. The man who once bragged about $1.25 million sales now couldn't balance his own books. They sold the SUV, then the house. What they couldn't sell, they boxed up in silence. Now they rent a second-floor walk-up off Route 9. Beige walls, carpet that smells faintly of mildew, the kind of place where the heating rattles and the neighbors don't knock. I hear from Marlene, her niece lives nearby, that the neighbors cross the street when they see Rachel coming. The woman who once kept me from friends now sits alone, her own phone quiet, her porch empty. I don't rejoice. But I notice the symmetry. For 18 months, Rachel and Kyle chipped away at my independence piece by piece. They called it care, but it was isolation. Cutting my friends out, opening my mail, turning my house into their project. Now it is they who are cut off. Watched with suspicion, their world shrunk to the size of a rented kitchen. And me? I walk the beach in the morning, my footprints unhurried. People waved, sometimes stopped to say they heard what happened, how proud they are. I stood up. I never wanted pride, I wanted peace. But perhaps peace sometimes comes only after the storm takes what it must. I thought losing Frank would be the end of my story. For a long time, I lived like it was. Quiet meals, quiet halls, quiet ache. But storms don't just destroy. Sometimes they clear space for something new. 3 months after the hearing, I signed up for an art class at the community center. The same halls where I once waited in the car for Rachel's lessons. I walked in with trembling hands, clutching a beginner's kit of brushes and 12 tubes of paint. The smell of turpentine, the scrape of chairs. It felt like a second chance I hadn't asked for but desperately needed. At first, my sketches were clumsy, apples that looked like bruises, seashells too sharp. But then one afternoon, I painted Lily chasing gulls along the beach. Her laughter spilt onto the canvas, uneven but alive. When the teacher pinned it on the wall, I felt something inside me unlock. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was making. Marlene coaxed me back to the book club. "We saved your chair," she said, patting the spot beside her. The women welcomed me with lemon cake and gossip, as if no time had passed. I listened, then spoke, then laughed until my cheeks ached. It was like stepping into a room where my voice had never left. The library called next. They needed volunteers to read to children on Saturday mornings. I said yes. And when I sat in that circle of small faces, Lily tucked against my side, I realized I was teaching again, not grammar or essays, but stories, the kind that keep a heart alive. And the house, our house, changed too. With James's help, the trust paid for repairs long delayed. Fresh white paint on the trim new shingles, a garden bed Marlene and I replanted with daisies. On summer evenings, Lily and I sit on the porch swing with Scout, the scrappy mutt we adopted from the shelter. She reads aloud from her chapter books, stumbling over the big words. Scout dozes at our feet, the ocean hums in the background. There are still nights when grief visits, when I reach for Frank's side of the bed and find only cool sheets. But I no longer feel hollow. I feel rooted like the fence posts Frank once hammered in, holding against the wind. I am not the woman they mistook me for, the frail widow, the easy signature, the silent guest in her own home. I am Margaret Leland, teacher, painter, reader of stories, keeper of my house, grandmother to Lily, who now knows women can say no and mean it. And as the sun dips into the horizon, painting the sky in colors even my brush can't capture, I know one thing for certain. This is not the end of my story. It is the beginning of the one I was always meant to tell. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind where the sea lay calm as glass. I just set my brushes down after finishing a watercolor of the lighthouse when the phone rang. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in weeks, Rachel. I let it ring twice before answering. Mom? Her voice was tight, brittle, like glass about to crack. Can you ever forgive me? For a long moment, I said nothing. I watched Scout roll over on the rug, belly up, paws twitching in some dream of chasing gulls. Then I answered, steady. Rachel, I already forgave you. The moment I filed those papers, I let the anger go. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean I'll let you do it again. She inhaled sharply. I don't want to lose you. You don't lose me by distance, Rachel. You lost me when you chose control over trust, when you treated me as a signature instead of a mother. We both live with that now, silence. I could hear her swallow. So what happens to us? I looked out the window where Lily's bike leaned against the porch, helmet dangling from the handlebars. We live our lives. You and yours, me and mine. If there's reason to meet, we meet. But I won't force it, and neither should you. Her voice wavered. So, you're saying it's over? No, I said gently. I'm saying it's different. Forgiveness builds peace, Rachel, but boundaries build respect. And I need both. Another silence, this one heavier. Then the line clicked dead. I set the phone down and breathed deep. The house was quiet, but not lonely. Forgiveness had come. Forgetting never would. And that was the balance I could live with. The classroom smelled of crayons and pencil shavings. Parents lined the back wall, smiling politely as the children read their essays one by one. When it was Lily's turn, she climbed onto the small wooden step, her pigtails bouncing. She held her paper with both hands and began, My grandma is the bravest person I know. She taught me that loving someone doesn't mean letting them use you. She showed me that even when people think you're weak, you can still say no and mean it. Her voice was clear, steady, the way a child sounds when they believe every word. I felt my chest tighten. Not with grief, not with anger. Those storms had passed. It was something softer, fiercer. Pride. Pride that the lesson had taken root, not in the courtroom, not in the trust documents, but in the heart of a little girl who would carry it forward. I remembered the words whispered in my kitchen. Grandma, my parents are going to take all your money. And my quiet reply to myself, then I made my plan. I remembered the notary's hum the moment I set down their pen and raised my own papers. I remembered telling Rachel, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean I'll let you do it again. Now, sitting in the back of that classroom, I realized the victory wasn't the $842,315 trust or the 180 feet of oceanfront saved from their hands. The true victory was Lily's voice rising above it all. When she finished, she looked for me in the crowd. I didn't wave, I just smiled. Because this wasn't about celebration, it was about continuation. The house, the trust, the evidence, they were all tools. What mattered was this. I had shown my granddaughter that women, even at 67, even when written off as fragile, can still guard their own doors, hold their own pens, and write their own endings. And as Lily stepped down, cheeks pink with pride, I knew the story wasn't about what I'd kept. It was about the future I had just set free. Message. Age does not silence a woman's voice. Strength doesn't fade with silver hair. Independence is not selfish. It is love with a backbone. And the most powerful yes you can ever give your family is the moment you teach them that your no still matters.